Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the internet. My name is Nicholas Coriano. I'm going to publish this on my channels. I'm sure Dalvecchio is going to publish this on this. If you guys haven't met Dalvecchio, you haven't followed me long enough then, because yeah, I've definitely introduced you guys to this guy before. But Dalvecchio Parks is a great friend of mine, a former law classmate. So I put him on. I wanna introduce him and have him introduce himself and his practice and what he's doing, man. What's up, Dalvecchio?
Nothing much, man. How you doing today, Nick? Glad to be on. Like you said, we've been rocking for a minute now.
A minute.
I think since, obviously in law school, and then we started doing business together a couple of years ago for servitude, while I was touring around Africa, trying to find some new territory for us to, go and be advisors to and things of that nature. But, since then, I've been back in the States, back in here in Atlanta. Started my practice back in November of last year. And basically what I've been doing is working with small business owners, trying to turn small business owners into big business owners. You know how we do it.
Exactly.
So we basically, with last year, the pandemic, everybody was out, losing jobs, unfortunately. Unemployment rate spiked. So you had a lot of entrepreneurs trying to become business owners. So we started with helping people to form their businesses. So whether you were trying to get an LLC, S corp, or a corporation, we were trying to put you on and get you in the game. And then we were actually trying to help you figure out how to move your business and protect your business assets. So like owning everything that is associated with your business.
And a lot of people don't know, right, that a business is not just the LLC document formation. Most people say, well, I got my business set up, but really to have your business straight, there's a lot of components, right? After the LLC, there's documents that we put in place, or the corporation, right? Whether it's the operating agreement or bylaws. Can you speak a little bit more on, what that does for a business owner? Because what's the theme today? The theme is really all about protecting the business owner, establishing them, and then making sure they're good, making sure they have the rights and the rights in their assets to be sustainable.
No, you're definitely correct. So, when I talk to people who are, trying to become a business owner, the first thing they say, I want to get my LLC. That's the new trend these days. So you get your LLC. They don't really know the ins and outs of exactly what they need to be doing once they get that LLC. And so I try to educate people that you need to have an operating agreement. An operating agreement is essentially that. It's how you're going to operate your business. So, in the business world, they have what we call formalities. The whole purpose of getting an LLC is to protect yourself, protect your assets, right? Keep you safe from, if your company gets in trouble, gets any debts, any judgments against it. You don't want anybody coming for your house or your car or any of your personal assets, your bank accounts, whatever the case may be. So what an operating agreement does is basically just lay out all the things that you would need to follow according to business law, called formalities, so people can't pierce the veil and come after your personal assets. So we talk about, who owns the business, because your LLC document is not going to say that. It doesn't say,
it shows the incorporator. It shows the incorporator of the business.
It doesn't say Nicholas Coriano is the owner of the businessplanGuru.com. It doesn't say that. It just shows who incorporated it and what's the name of the business. So when you get an operating agreement, it's going to list out every member of who owns that business and what percentage they own. And then it starts breaking things down, like who's the registered agent, how much voting rights does a member have. So, you have to hold meetings, have to keep minutes of business decisions that you're making for your business, where you're going to open your bank account, who you're going to do business with. All these things have to be voted on if you're going to add new members to your business. These are things that people don't necessarily think about when they're starting a business. You got to actually hold a meeting. It's required by, it's required by law.
An extreme example of not thinking about this are guys like Steve Jobs, who got kicked out of their company because, they either took on investment or brought on members or shareholders that didn't have their best interests in mind, and they knew the operating agreement better than them. And it's not that off, right? I was just finishing a story, Atlanta native Ted Turner, who owned the Braves and a bunch of CNN and bunch of projects this guy did, but at the end he ended up getting fired from AOL Time Warner because he diluted his ownership rights, and he wasn't really thinking about his voting rights and his operating agreement. So And that kind of is a good transition, right? Because this guy owned a ton of intellectual property, like through CNN and through CNN and TNT, he owned a bunch of, trademarks under cartoons and movies. And that's another asset, right? Trademarks.
No, that's definitely another avenue that business owners need to be thinking about. I tell business owners or people who are going to be business owners, you actually need to be thinking about your intellectual property from the moment you start writing your business plan, from the moment before you even go out and file your paperwork with the Secretary of State to have a business.
Yeah.
Your trademarks, your patents, your copyrights, those things are extremely important. And like you said, Ted Turner, Apple, all these companies, Google, they have
their asset portfolio and intellectual property is huge.
Exactly. They have tons of intellectual properties. They protect everything from their business name to their brand names, to their products, to the design of their packaging, to,
even lease agreements and other copyrights and trademarks, right? Like in the Ted Turner story that I was listening to, wasn't some of the trademarks he developed, like TNT or CNN, but then there was other trademarks that were licensed through MGM, like a movie, right? Yeah. And these licensing deals were worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and it was thin air. It was a trademark. It was a copyright. It was an agreement. It was a contract, right? Going back to, which is a good segue to the next section of how to protect the business and contract. But the operating agreement, even the trademark in some senses, all end up on paper. And I think one of the most important pieces of paper that a business owner can talk about is contracts.
When you take a step back, business law is nothing but contracts.
Yeah.
Contracts with the state to file a business. Yeah. Contracts with your partners to make sure that you're getting your bread.
Exactly. Contracts with your suppliers to make sure your prices don't go up, right?
Exactly. You're placing contracts all over the place. And these are things that, everyone needs to be thinking about before you go into business. How are you going?
And before we dig too deep into contracts, I love what you just said, because it reminded me of something I say all the time. Get your paper right.
Yes.
Get your paper right. Like entrepreneurs, they always talk about paper. They're talking about cash. They think it's $50 and $100 bills. No, get your paper right. Get your trademarks right. Get your contracts right. Get your operating agreement right. Get your purchase agreement right. Get your employment contracts right. Like that's what I talk about. When I say get your paper right, right? There's a lot of different kinds of paper. You got stock, that's paper. You got cash, that's paper. We got bonds, that's paper. There's a lot of paper out there, man.
No, and I don't think a lot of people are thinking those things, man. We're talking about big picture. We're talking about the big picture. How are you getting your paper right? How are you leaving your legacy? Business
and I want to give a little credence to what he's saying here for the audience, right? Specifically, because when we talk about big picture, here's a guy. How many countries did you go to in Africa?
I stayed in about 11 countries.
11 countries. Listen, when this guy was in Africa, we were on Zoom calls trying to figure out how to dominate continents, right? And it didn't stop there. We're talking about Asia. I took a trip to India, right? And we're still in veins of how do you think bigger? How do we contract this? How do we get our organizations bigger? And that's what we're here to help you guys do, right? Is get that paper right. So let's talk a little bit about contracts, man. Let's talk a little bit about contracts. What is some of the first things you're thinking about when you're thinking about contracts? And then I'll share I guess some of the things I think about when I'm talking to a client about contracts.
So when I'm talking to a client about a contract, the first thing we need to talk about, we need to know what you're doing. Like, what is it that you're trying to accomplish with your contract? Is this a product that you're trying to sell? Are you a buyer? Are you a seller? Are you, if we're talking about business rights, if it's a corporation, are we talking about a shareholders agreement? Are you buying something to get more equity in something? Like, I need to know what it is that we're talking about so we can get a framework of what kind of contract that we are going to need in order to make sure that you're legally protected. Because at the end of the day, I think the person that shows up with the contract is the person that runs the deal.
Yeah.
Because once you show up with the contract, you're negotiating from a second place. So we need to make sure that we're putting everything in that contract that's going to be beneficial for you and let them start to negotiate down. And I always want to know what are your must-haves and what are the things that you can live without. Because once we get into negotiation of this contract, then we need to know where we can give a little bit of leverage.
Yeah, I always found interesting. One of the things I remember learning when I was sitting next to you at the John Marshall Law School was, contracts didn't have to be written.
No.
And this was so interesting to me, right? Because here we are, future lawyers and attorneys, and you know you're going to write this contract, and then they tell you it doesn't have to be written. There just has to be an offer and an acceptance and consideration, right? A little legal jargon for all our paralegals and lawyers and attorneys out there, right? But it doesn't have to be written. But then you realize why it should be written, right?
I'm a fan of no oral deals. We don't do any handshake.
No oral deals.
no handshake deals, man, because that gets you in so much trouble. People start changing up stuff, talking about what they didn't say or what they didn't do. That's how you go to court.
Exactly. Now, question, can an email act as a contract? If I'm digitally signing contracts, can an email communication back and forth act as a contract?
Of course. I mean, logically, if you think about it, it's just if you can have an oral contract, a digital contract will be just a version of putting it in writing. And in the technology age that we're living in, those type of contract, you can write a contract on a napkin. It'll be fine. Yeah. So if I'm signing it over the internet and sending it off, it has the same validity that it would have if we put it on a piece of paper and signed it physically. Yeah,
I want a lot of the startup entrepreneurs to be conscious of this, because sometimes we're blasting off emails like it's no big deal, but what we just explained to you guys is that a contract can be oral. Should it be oral? No, it should not be oral. I'm with Dalvecchio on this. No handshake deals, no oral deals. Get it in writing. But when you're sending communication back and forth on email, that writing could potentially end up being a contract, even though you guys didn't go to a lawyer and put bullet points and have signatures at the end.
And so the thing is, you need to be very careful of that, because think about it for a second. You're blasting off these emails. You're not really thinking twice about it. You're putting in there, hey, I'll do X, Y, and Z. You need to make sure at the end of that, if that's not what you guys really came to an agreement about, then you need to get another contract that actually shows this is our entire agreement right here. Everything before that doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
That way people can't get you to court and be like, you said this on, March 2nd, but now we have a contract, in May. That May contract need to make sure you either include everything or exclude everything.
Exactly. That's a great tip, man, because, I did an Instagram video yesterday or the day before talking about how I forget what the name of the clause is. Put it in the comment section if you guys remember it, but the clause where they talk about the entire agreement, right? It's an entire agreement clause. It basically says, hey, this is the entire agreement. There's no prior agreements are part of this, right? You disclaim everything prior to that. And that's even more important now in the digital age, like you said, right? Where you're blasting off emails to each other back and forth, and you might have negotiated something for 30 days, and then you need to contract. You want to make sure that they can't go back into those emails and print out, your 100 email chain and be like, hey, look what you said on January 3rd here,
No, I mean, I've seen some business owners get caught up in that type of thing, had to deal with a couple of very successful people down here that, they were in a relationship or whatever, keep it, very vague. In a relationship, they blew up. The person came back with an email saying, hey, we agreed, this is our communication going back and forth about the idea that you put out there into the atmosphere. I deserve 50% of it.
Yeah. Hey, listen, it's a powerful thing. It's a powerful thing what you put out into the world, and especially in exchange and legal terms, right? In the business world, when you're negotiating something.
No. And that's why I say you got to come to the table with the contract, because I think that puts you in a position of power. I think that gives you an edge. I think whatever you put in that contract, if you have an attorney I advise you to get an attorney.
Exactly. I advise you to call Dalvecchio if you need an attorney.
If you don't have an attorney, you need to make sure you're an expert at what you're putting in there in your industry, because you want to make sure that you're locking people into things that are going to be beneficial to bring you the money so you can get the bag.
Exactly. And we said it before, there's tons of contracts, right? Even the operating agreement is a contract. There's thousands and thousands of different contracts. But I want to just kind of point out one and maybe put this into the ether of people that otherwise wouldn't know, right? As we said, paper, we were talking about this earlier, right? Get your paper right. I'm a firm believer, I've said this in my vlogs and podcasts before, cash is trash. There's way better paper out there than cash. I'm talking about deeds to real estate. I'm talking about stocks. I'm talking about bonds. But one of the most powerful, I think, is contracts with your customers. So, you know, if you're starting a service business or you're starting a products business even, and you can contract the client or a customer out for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and the payables now are due, you know, every 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever it is, that contract is worth money, man. That paper is real paper. Sometimes that paper, that 8.5 by 11 piece of paper is worth more than a $500 bill, $1,000 bill, right? Sometimes you're talking about hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars on that contract. So I encourage a lot of my entrepreneurs to be thinking about that. How do you contract wealth, right? So sometimes it's just contracting. For example, if you're a single member LLC and you form an LLC, is there an intrinsic value in having the LLC? Yeah, there's an intrinsic value, but I'm talking about real wealth. I'm talking about how do we get this paper and we can trade this paper for more money. And I think there's a lot to be said there when you talk about contracts with customers and clients.
Exactly. And I mean, when you start talking about those contracts with customers and clients, that's where we start getting back into what are your business assets? Obviously, you might sell a service or you might sell a product, but are you utilizing every business asset that you have? And when I say that, you got these copyrights, you got these business names, you got these products. Can you license them out? Can you get a contract? Can you get a licensing agreement to get that paper to run that contract? Now you got however much that might be worth. Somebody might be willing to pay for what you have outside of just the product that you sell.
Exactly. And the way you tie that in legally is get that contract. Get that contract done, guys. Hey, listen, if you guys need Delvecchio, let them know where to find you, man.
If you guys want to find me, you can find me on Instagram at 5-Star Esquire, or you can find me on my website, www.parkscri.com, or you can find me on Facebook under Delvecchio Parks. I haven't set that page up yet, but I'm going to get a group on Facebook, private community, where we're talking about legal ownership and talking about how you get the contracts, contract vaults, things of that nature, so you guys can not have to pay the fees that necessarily come with an attorney, but you can get the legal advice and keep it pushing to own your business, every aspect of it.
Hey guys, we're surprisingly affordable. You know, I know there's a stigma when it comes to attorneys and lawyers that, you know, I've heard it from plenty of my clients. They're scared to call an attorney. They're scared to call a lawyer. You know, feel free to call Delvecchio, man. He's a great guy. You know, I call him constantly to, you know, bounce ideas off of and definitely grow my companies. He's definitely in my inner circle. So I appreciate you, man. I appreciate this time, man.
I appreciate you, Nick, and more power to you, man, and all the business that you're doing and all the people out there. Hey, you guys got a good one right there. So listen to that
man,
advice.
I appreciate it, man. This is the first of many. Let's set up where let's think of. As a matter of fact, if you're watching this and you have an idea for another video that we can do, put it in the comment section. Or add us at Delvecchio on Instagram or at me on any of my profiles. I'll put his profile links underneath the video. But let us know what you think, you know, maybe a weekly or a monthly series on something that you guys want to learn more about. But I love the idea of, you know, getting your paper right, getting that legal contracts right, getting your legal rights in order to make sure that you can monetize and grow wealth, man.
Yes, definitely. That's what it's all about, leaving that legacy, building wealth.
Hey, man, Happy New Year's, guys. I hope you guys are great. We'll talk soon, guys.